Hey guys, it's Holly. So today I wanted to take a look at one of two Deathly Hallows Part 2 sets that were released back in 2011 and, still continue to be only one of two Deathly Hallows Part 2 sets, and that is the Forbidden Forest. This is set 4865 and initially released in 2011 to go alongside the Deathly Hallows Part 2 cinematic release, and originally back then it would have retailed for $12 US, which roughly these days, including inflation, would be around $18 to $20, which actually lines up pretty well considering, I guess, like the small set range of prices. Now this set did release before the movie came out, so sort of looking back now at what scene this was actually based off in the movie, being, I guess, like Harry's sacrifice, is actually pretty shocking, and I don't think that it's ever going to be remade again. It's really, I guess, like confusing to me sort of looking back that this was a set made, but you can tell that it was sort of definitely nerfed down in order to be a little bit more kid-friendly. Now when I was a kid, I wanted this set for one reason, and that was Narcissa Malfoy, and even as an adult, that is the exact reason why I ended up with this set. So while we wait for more Deathly Hallows Part 2 sets, let's go and have a look at this one. So here is the Forbidden Forest all built up, and even back in 2011, it was very clear that this set was very much just a way to get a lot of really core characters and some really cool minifigures in such a small set, as the set didn't really offer too much. It was also only one of two that supported the Deathly Hallows Part 2 cinematic release, and also since then is still one of the only two Deathly Hallows Part 2 sets that has released, and it's really sort of strange, I guess, looking back these days because of how violent this scene was. I just feel like this is something that definitely wouldn't have been made today. That being said, let's take a really close look at it, starting off with the minifigures. So our first minifigure, like every other Harry Potter set, is Harry Potter himself. Now this minifigure definitely wasn't incredibly rare or hard to find by the time this set rolled around. It's pretty much the exact same minifigure as they did in majority of the sets from 2010 till 2011. I thought his face was really cool, and he does reuse the good old classic Harry Potter hair from the early 2000s. His torso print as well is nothing special. Those older torsos though did in fact have the house crest on the torso still, as well as a really wide V-neck. I mean, it was really great for, I guess, army building all of your Gryffindor students, but besides that, this Harry Potter really doesn't have a lot to offer. However, he did have a double-sided face, and I guess as well was the start of Harry Potter, I guess, Hogwarts minifigures having black legs instead of grey ones. Next up is Lord Voldemort, and prior to this set he only featured in the Hogwarts castle, which was quite a pricey set when it released back in the day, so it was really good to get this character in such a cheap set, especially given, this is the finale, he's the major villain, and I really liked this Voldemort minifigure. I thought he was incredibly cool. His face was really good as well for back in the day. Personally, I much prefer the caped version of him rather than like the dress robes version too that we see today. He did as well come along with this white rod to represent his wand, and I'm very glad looking at that now that we did change that up a bit. Besides that, the minifigure is incredibly simple. There's really not that much to him. Besides this though, the only other time that he appeared was in like a Comic-Con exclusive sort of bag, but even then that figure was nothing special. It exactly matched this one here. And lastly is Narcissa Malfoy, and this is definitely, at least for me, the reason that I bought the set, and I assume probably quite a lot of other people as well, as it is the only time that she has ever appeared in Lego form, and even to this day, I absolutely love this minifigure. I honestly feel like they would only change up a couple of things if they were to make this figure today. Firstly, this skirt piece would definitely be that new sort of sloped one rather than the good old slope bricks that we used to use for tens and tens of years. Also, I think the face design would just be a little bit different. I do wish though that, like if they do remake her, that she'd have a custom hairpiece, but even then I loved the printing on this and the way they sort of worked around it. Her torso printing and skirt printing as well is really well done, and overall I'm just a really big fan of this minifigure, and I'm very glad to have her in my collection as a whole. I also think she was just a perfect choice for this set. And next up was Hagrid, and this was his third appearance in this form, and the last version, I guess, in this original Hagrid mold, which I really love the dark brown version of him. I think it looks fantastic. I also was a really big fan of this sort of rubbery headpiece that he had throughout like the really early versions of this character. His head though, always been a little bit awkward. It also only has a single-sided face. Not that you'd really be able to see much of his expression otherwise, but this set again was a really cheap and easy way to get this minifigure, because otherwise he was only included in the Hagrid's Hut set from 2012, as well as the giant Diagon Alley set. As for the Forbidden Forest set itself, it is very bland. I mean, at the same time, like, this is a pretty violent scene, so there's really not that much you can do, and even Forbidden Forest sets these days still have, like, pretty decent tree builds. I think, though, this is a really impressive tree build. I love the size of it, I love how it's quite large, but also the fact that you get 3 of the giant dark green leaves. I think that is a major win for this set and works really well. I also love the fact that they've used dark brown instead of reddish brown. To me personally, this color scheme works so much better. It's sort of frustrating looking back at this, seeing how a lot of the Forbidden Forest builds these days use reddish brown. I just think for like a really creepy forest with like a bunch of really creepy creatures, like the dark brown really works a lot better, as well as like the dark tan bases. Now the tree itself is very simple, just built up of a bunch of different sloping pieces as well as some arch pieces. On the top there is one of those little classic spider pieces, and on the bottom you've got a really nice printed mushroom, which I absolutely love that print, so it's really great to get another one. You've also got this little Technic lever which just spins around. I mean, it's nothing special, but I will show you that play feature in a second. And then lastly there's this really big space on the side which is just surrounded by these blue flame pieces, so that instead, I guess, of having Hagrid tied up with a bunch of ropes, you can stick him in these flames and that is how he would be captured. That's how they display it on the box. I think it's a really good, I guess, sort of like child-friendly workaround, but even then I'm sort of surprised that they went and did that in the first place. Now these 2 jumper plates on the other hand, you can stick Harry or Narcissa or even Voldemort for that matter, and then hit the back of this piece and the minifigure will go flying. I guess it's sort of like Voldemort casts a spell and all of a sudden, bam, Harry is a bit unalive. I mean, I guess it's more for you to, I guess, attack Voldemort than Harry, but I mean, if we're really going for scene accuracy, it should be Harry that is in there, and that is basically the entire set. There's really not a lot to it, but I think, you know, considering what this scene is, I think LEGO did a really good job in sort of making, I guess, like a kid-friendly little play set, and I guess, too, they really made this set like what it should be, and that is just a cheap set and a great way to get a bunch of really cool minifigures. So for that reason, I think, especially back then, it was a pretty good set. However, admittedly, I did have my eye on the Night Bus and the Battle for Hogwarts far more than I guess I ever would have considered buying this set. So that is the entire set, and overall, I mean, it was pretty good value if you wanted all of these characters. The fact that Hagrid was in a cheap set was a really big win. The fact that Voldemort as well was in a really cheap set, especially being the main villain of the franchise. I mean, this Harry Potter minifigure was produced so many times, he's very cheap. And also, Narcissa Malfoy, the only minifigure we have ever gotten of her, and her design, especially for 2011, I think is immaculate. The build, on the other hand, though, it's just very minimal. I mean, it's still a pretty good design for a tree, but the play features are a bit lacking. I do like, I guess, how they've sort of PG'd, I guess, this entire scene, you know, since this is the scene where Harry does sacrifice himself and Hagrid, I guess, was tied up in rope, so we sort of replaced that with some fire. I think LEGO did a pretty good job. This is definitely not a scene or a set that I think would ever be remade or replicated these days. I just feel like it sort of hits in that, I guess, too violent section for LEGO, especially considering that was one of the reasons that they did give to not doing, I guess, Deathly Hallows sets in general for now. That has since changed with the Ministry of Magic, though I wouldn't be holding for a replacement of this set. And especially these days, this isn't a set that I would particularly run out to go and get, unless you're like myself and you've pretty much got, like, I guess, all of the other sets from that era. Otherwise, I would just buy the Narcissa Malfoy minifigure on her own and leave it at that. But let me know your thoughts on this set and the fact that it was made in general in the comments down below. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel down below. And be sure to check out my other LEGO Harry Potter reviews on the end screen now.